Afternoon, my friend. How are you?
How are you?
I'm well. All things considered,
I know. We get the nice backdrop of Prime Cigar, I see.
I, I figure it's only fitting that I live like 3 blocks from here, so I figured I would come over and record here. Kind of feels like home.
Yeah. But I bet it feels a little different without having it so busy and with all the crowd and it's a little eerie probably.
Yeah. It's I would have never built my own personal cigar lounge to be so large.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
so what's been new with you since our last encounter?
Um, I went to Cuba at the beginning of this year. That was an interesting trip. As far as this whole thing, we've been adjusting. You know what I mean? We've been doing what we can do. It's nice because with the membership component, with all of our members having lockers here, we've still been allowing them to come and pick up their cigars.
Okay.
So we get to see like most of our closest customers and a lot of our members, once a week. It's really been just kind of like checking in on each other and and so on and so forth. But to keep a little bit of that social connection has been nice. Um, Otherwise, it's stay home, make sure everybody's safe, healthy, happy, and wait to get back to work.
Have you heard anything from the city about when things might let up so you can get back to not normal, but let some people back in?
We're it's an estimation, right? I should qualify that statement, but we're looking probably at something like the middle of May,
Okay.
as far as limited occupancy, social distancing, maybe, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe still um, masks as far as staff. Um, we don't know yet. Obviously, that's going to just come down to how that's regulated. But
Right.
I think sometime between the second and the end of May, the second week and the end of May, we'll be able to call it 50% open.
And you're
Um,
gonna have to do the implement some social distancing within the bar, like maybe not as much seating or spacing the seating out a little bit more.
exactly. I mean, there's some things that we're going to do anyway internally, at least in the beginning. To be conscious of and be aware of the virus, but also just to kind of make people feel more comfortable.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, like we'll only let like one group of people in the humidor at a time. We'll just kind of rotate people through. But yeah, also splitting up. Our seating is pretty well spaced out as it is anyway. It's kind of designed to be a little more roomy and comfortable. But we'll probably cut out like 20 or 30%, especially like the bar stools. We've been taking away like every other bar stool, so there's about like a 4 foot gap between people.
Okay.
Uh, Most likely, I mean, that's a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about doing internally,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what happens from a regulation standpoint. But I think everything will kind of fall in line with what the city and the county are expecting to do as well.
Okay. It'll be an adjustment, but it'll probably be nice to get back to business, not
Yeah,
as usual, but some type of business.
yeah, and also to give other people an outlet. You know what I mean? I'm really looking forward to being able to host and welcome people back into the space to give them a bit of normalcy in this crazy couple months we've been through.
Yeah. Um, it's what I wanted to do with deep cuts, especially is, I started off kind of touching base with a lot of the manufacturers that I know and I have a good relationship with, and then I thought, why not extend it to the retailers? Because you look at all the videos and stuff that people are doing now, and a lot of the focus, even though they talk about the small businesses, a lot of focus is still on the manufacturers. And so the retailers are kind of left to just kind of fend for themselves sometimes, or just post updates on Facebook, and they haven't really been able to get their story out. And especially with tobacco retailers, because it's always nice to hear from you all, because you all are in a completely different situation than a lot of other retailers.
Personally, I really appreciate it. I've actually I haven't I can't say that I've watched them at full, but I've checked into most of the stuff that you've done this week.
Uh-huh.
It's nice to see somebody giving an outlet, to the other side of the business. Uh,
Yeah.
and I also think there's some really great talent and some incredible personalities on the retail side of the business too. So it's nice to be able to kind of see some of that highlighted.
Definitely. And I've just been trying to do my part, as a media person. I mean, just like how you probably have seen a little bit of a slowdown on your side of the business. It's been a little bit of a slowdown for us because, usually April, May, June is like when things really ramp up and people are getting their big releases ready for the year. They're getting business things done. And it just hasn't been like that for the last couple of weeks. So it's been a little bit slow um, on the media side, which I don't know if it's definitely not a good thing. It's not necessarily, I guess, a bad thing. It's just that people just aren't, you know, operating as usual. So it's no big news to really speak of. There's a little bit more today than usual, which is nice. Um, but you know, it is what it is, I guess.
I will always and I continually appreciate your efforts and everything that you do. You've you've got a really good, from my perspective, you got a really good kind of comprehensive understanding of the outlets and the industry, and bringing attention to kind of all facets. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Um, so what I wanted to do with today is kind of dive into like your story, like what were you doing before you came to Prime Cigar, what led you to here now, and then kind of get your idea of as being a retailer and down in Miami, especially where there's like that's cigar culture for a lot of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting your pulse for some of the things that are going on in the industry right now that we're all kind of concerned about or looking at and talking about, and just getting your perspective as just a retailer and somebody who has connections and relationships with so many different people. Um, and I know I don't know all of your story. I know some of it, so it'll be interesting to me just to kind of learn more about you. Um, so I guess like the first question is kind of like going back to the beginning. So like, what were you doing before Prime Cigar?
So it's an interesting journey. I had my first cigar when I was still in high school, um, and it was always like a random occasion. And then in college, I used to wakeboard a lot in high school as well, and I actually brought my boat with me over to college. And I had to live on campus freshman year in college because I was on scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So the only place I could really get any studying done, believe it or not, was on the boat. So my whole freshman year, none of my friends knew that I had a boat. I used to keep it off campus, and I would just put it in the water and study and smoke cigars. And that's kind of where I really began to dive in and appreciate the culture, but the product and the experience more than anything. And kind of, I went back, I guess, a little too far, but it's relevant. So through college, I dabbled in all kinds of things. I started in business administration and finance. I ended up studying philosophy just because I was interested in the knowledge. And I realized that college for me wasn't necessarily going to be choosing my path. It was going to be gaining experience and knowledge and then figuring out what I wanted to do for myself after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So after school, after college, I was in the hospitality business, bartended all through school. I did business brokerage for a while, about 3 years. So it's for those who are unaware, it's like essentially a real estate agent for businesses. So we would help with the buy and sell side of the transactions, but also some valuation and some accounting. And in that business, I realized that most of my clients who were happy and successful were doing something that they were passionate about. And while I thoroughly enjoyed connecting people to their passion, business brokerage was not my passion. The people side of it was. So that's what kind of steered me back towards looking at what I was most excited about. And the hospitality business for sure, but the cigar side of things is really what attracted me. The culture, the access, the fact that you can sit in a room with people who you don't really know. Nobody talks about who they are so much in the cigar lounge, but there are people of status and prominence and success and affluence and just also ordinary people like myself, and that was really attractive to me to be able to sit in a room. I call it like the great equalizer. You know what I mean? When you're
Mm-hmm.
smoking a cigar, it's just the cigar and the people. Nothing else matters. So that's really kind of how it happened. Um, I was I opened a cocktail lounge here in South Florida, and two of my friends, the owner and the general manager, also wanted to do a cigar program, and I kind of helped them with that, just as a consumer. And then that blossomed. We opened a retail store. I was a partner in the retail store, and that's kind of how it started. And then I went to the manufacturing side. I was in sales for a little while. And while I was doing sales on the manufacturing side, I also worked at a place just on Sundays and Mondays, helping out a friend of mine who was the owner operator. He was there 7 days a week. So I basically just took over his 2 slowest days so he could have some time off. Mm-hmm. And through that, Prime Cigar and I got connected, and the rest is history. I've been with the company 3 years. Absolutely phenomenal. Great people. Our ownership's amazing. And for me, this was kind of like, okay, this is what I was looking for. Like, people are amazing. Our clientele is incredible. Our staff's amazing. I really like the emphasis that we try and do things our way, respective of the culture in the industry, but also understanding who we are, and what our model is. So it's just a natural fit. I know that was a super long answer. So
no, that's good. When it comes to like running a bar, like what's the biggest challenge?
Yeah. So effectively this runs as 2 businesses inside one room, between the retail and the cigar side of things, and the hospitality and the bar side of things. There's so many similarities that they're not that different. The wine and the spirit culture and the cigar culture, as far as the products, are very similar. I will say the biggest challenge is the personalities. So it's kind of an overstatement, but this is one of my some of the people I looked up to as a kid. So it's an analogy that I use frequently. Phil Jackson wrote a book, and he used to talk all the time about when he had the championship Bulls, how they were so talented of a team, and they were all so dead set on winning that most of what he had to do was figure out how all these different, very strong, very unique individuals could function better as a unit. And I think that's it's not challenging in that it's difficult, but it's very nuanced. You know what I mean? Between bartenders and service staff and other managers, getting everybody to kind of serve the same purpose, but to keep their own individual identity and personality, and kind of, make it their own, I would say is a fun, but probably the biggest challenge.
Like, and what's it like running? I mean, you're in a great city, of course, for a bar. So how do you, what's the flow like for traffic? Because I know that speaking to some other cigar owners in different places, especially in Florida area, sometimes the trouble is getting that flow. If they're in a place like a hotel, for example, getting that flow in during the day, because things automatically pick up at night, but it's still, they want that flow throughout the day. So how's your flow? And then how do you kind of get people in the mindset of you can come in, the moment we open early in the afternoon, and then there's stuff going on at night, of course.
So we have one major natural advantage in the location. Brickell is a strong, thriving business community in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And there's also a tremendous amount of tourism and hotels in the area. So directly, we do a lot of I don't want to call it marketing because it's not, but we've built great relationships with the hotels and the restaurants in the area, and we share business. We refer business, they refer back to us. But I would say the easiest, simplest answer is we emphasize to all of our staff and myself and everybody else to make everybody's experience here beyond exceptional. And generally what happens for us for the daytime business is we'll get 2 guys to come over from one of their offices, maybe their first time here, maybe not. But I've had people start to realize that they can actually order lunch out, have it delivered here, and take their business lunch in the cigar lounge. You know what I mean? So that's really what it's been for us, which is just fostering an environment that catches people off guard in that, you think, okay, I'm just going to go have a cigar and hang out, and then we'll go back to do whatever we do. Or, but this has become, people will actually set up meetings here. We have a conference room. So we've tried to position the daytime part of the business as an extension of our clientele's business. And I think that's really been one of the keys to the AM success for us.
Okay. And I do know that, like, when some people from TMV come down to Miami, they do kind of go to Prime Cigar during the day for a nice meeting because it's a nice getting out of the office setting and just in a nice relaxed setting. They can have a cigar, they can have a smoke, they can have a drink, and all that stuff. So that does make a lot of sense what you just said.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, and then the beauty of it is you know, with our locals, our members, but then also with for us being able to be in such a high density business area that also has a pretty solid amount of tourism. It's, you know, it's a natural advantage of the location.
Yeah, and just for those people who are watching this on playback, how has Brickell changed? Because I know it's changed. Because I went to college there, for an academic year, like 2000 to 2002. It was completely different. Like they told you that one of the first things they told you when back then was don't go downtown.
Right.
Like try to go all around downtown or go as quickly as you can through downtown to get to where you're going. But now it's a completely different. I mean, that's like the place to me. Whenever I come to Miami now, I try to stay down in Brickell. I mean, that's has some great hotels, great restaurants, things in walkable distance. It's just a fun place to be now. So this how have you seen kind of like Brickell evolve?
Sure. So I've been here a little over 2 years. I've been in South Florida, actually, similarly to you. I was here for college, so I've been here since 2000. Mm-hmm. Let me start by saying, just in the 2 years that I've been here, I've seen probably, talk about the core Brickell area. It's like 12 square blocks. I've probably seen 100 businesses open in those 12 square blocks in 2 years. So just to speak to the growth, but also right now there's probably 5 towers under construction, still under construction during this. So the growth that the city is seeing is also evolving, because initially the redevelopment of Brickell was very much driven by foreign investment and foreign residents. And now I'm speaking to people more and more on a weekly basis who are moving from other parts of the United States. So like major cities, Chicago, New York, California, people are fleeing high tax states, also high regulation states, but they're still able to be in an urban environment, where you can, like Brickell, for example, I don't get in a car maybe more than once every other week. Everything that I need is walking distance. I mean, it's not a great analogy to say it's like Manhattan, but it is kind of like a little Miami version of one part of Manhattan, and then to take it back further, like you said, I mean, in less than 2 decades, Brickell was essentially uninhabitable. I mean, it was a place where, like you, I got lost one time getting off the highway going down to the Keys, and quickly realized that I needed to get back on the highway.
Yes.
So that, I mean, the city of Miami has evolved a lot over the last 2 decades in and of itself. But the transformation in Brickell, I mean, like another point that you made that's, I think, very relevant for us specifically is you have tourists now who literally don't go to the beach anymore. They'll go over to the beach, but it used to be when you came to Miami, you stayed in South Beach and that was
right.
it. And now most people that I speak to would prefer to be in Brickell. So the fact that we overtook the business part of Miami and also the tourism part in Miami in those 12 to 16 square blocks, it's pretty tremendous.
Now, when it comes to, because I've been in your humidor, so I know you have like a pretty good selection of cigars and cigar brands. You have your well-known brands, and you have some of your, I guess what they would call boutique brands, or kind of your smaller manufacturers. Like, how do you go about choosing what cigars to bring in? Because you do have a limited space in there, so it's not like you can just play around and say, oh, we're just going to bring in all these different cigars and see what works. Like, how do you know, like, what to bring in or what to kind of give a chance?
I'm gonna take a page out of Angela's book from yesterday, because I think she had a great answer, and I don't want to plagiarize it, so I'm gonna give her credit. But a lot of it, I think, is very true for me and for us as well, which is obviously, there are certain brands, like you said, like it's a pretty even split of what I would say, like, call it the Big Ten, whatever word you want to subscribe to it, but the Padrones, the Fuentes, the Davidoffs, Altadis, obviously, and Casa de Montecristo in our relationship. But also, because so many of even the big brands these days are now also using other manufacturers for some of their products. I mean, you've seen the Davidoff Placencia collaborations. Mm-hmm. AJ's making cigars for almost everybody. It's actually made it slightly more challenging for me Because, for example, the AJ Fernandez H. Upman and the AJ Fernandez Montecristo are two of my best-selling cigars from that line. So I have to be careful about not cannibalizing that with some of AJ's production from his own lines.
All right.
So first and foremost, it's quality of tobacco, the consistency of the delivery of the product, and the enjoyment of the smoke. I still, to this day, smoke for flavor first. There's a million other things that come along with that, but I have some culinary background, and the aromas and the flavors is number one. So I've smoked every cigar in the humidor. I will always do that. We don't bring anything in unless unanimously we all agree that it's something we're excited about and would be happy to sell. Then it comes down to, like, on the smaller end of things, I really like companies that are pretty well vertically integrated, or sourcing most of their own tobacco. So you talk about like Casa Fernandez, Aganorsa, the Aladino family, Aroa as well. With my experience with the smaller side of the industry, there tends to be some more passion behind, and you can get some much more interesting stuff because it's still the vision of the founder of the company.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same time, I think you also get a little bit of inconsistency. So, that for me, I think that's more economic than anything. So I like to be able to do business with companies that have access to either a tremendous amount of their own tobacco, or have been in the business long enough where they're connected to growers and manufacturers. So I think that's a big, big part of it. Also, I like to look forward at trends. So I'll go back to Aladino as an example. The Aladino Corojo Reserve, when it first came out, I thought was one of the more impressive and unique, but also very classic traditional blends that I had smoked in quite some time. And it got a lot of attention from the underlying press. So not necessarily the major magazines, but the middle tier media outlets. So that was something that, once I enjoyed it and I realized other people were enjoying it as well, we started circulating it through a lot of different consumers' hands. And one of the major advantages, I think, for a place like this, where you would expect us to basically just have the big brands, when you catch people by surprise with some of these, I mean, and the Aroa family are by no means small, right? So it's not a great,
Right.
but Aladino was not necessarily a huge brand 2 or 3 years ago. A lot of people knew about it. So when you catch somebody by surprise and they're smoking something that is exceptional, that they haven't heard of before, well, now you have their trust, right? So it's not so much about exclusivity. Like I'm not ever concerned about, if I have this, it can't be sold down the street. I don't care about that. The way we beat people is by service and experience. But gaining trust in the humidor is something that has always been important to me, because I started smoking so young. When I walked into the humidor at 25, I pretty much knew what I was doing and what I was looking for, but I was 25. So the majority of the people that I was dealing with just wanted this kid out of their humidor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So call it jaded, whatever it is, but it stuck with me. Like I try and make every single experience in the humidor as special as possible, because I genuinely feel like once people trust you, then you can experiment a little more with them. And when you can expand palates, like one of my favorite things on the planet is when someone tells me that they only smoke Connecticut's or they only like mild cigars. Okay, no problem. I have a ton of those. But there's other wrappers that can give you that soft, creamy, light, enjoyable smoke. And when I get to kind of push people's boundaries, by me, I mean all of us, our staff, that's really fun. So I think the big brand, small brand metrics, the relationship, that's a big tool for us. I mean, you have names that everybody knows. So if you don't want to talk to me about cigars, you can find something that you want, and we'd be happy to take care of it. But for those who are interested in discovering more, you have to have those options. And it's, I say it lightly, because like I mentioned, Aganorsa and Aladino. I mean, Aganorsa is one of the largest growers of tobacco in the world. I'm not sure that I should be calling them boutique, but I don't really know entirely what that word really truly means. So whatever. But like, it's just the Cuevas family, for example. That's another one. I had the opportunity to really get to know them as a family and personally. That's another real benefit that we have here in Miami. in that almost everybody's right around the corner, right?
Right.
So, and this very much is a relationship business. I don't, I don't believe, I don't care what technology does and the evolutions of things and all the rest of those. If I don't know the person who I'm buying cigars from, I'm probably not going to buy them. So, like with Cuevas, for example, I met them first. I met the family. I met the people. I got to meet their kids, and then I smoked the cigar. And it wasn't that their personal, the way they were, affected my opinion of the cigar. I liked the cigar, but now the fact that I like the cigar and I trust the owners, it only makes it that much easier to support that business.
Like for you, and you mentioned like you look around at some of the other media and what they're listing. I mean, do ratings and all these things matter to you, or do you just kind of use that as a pulse to say maybe I should just check that out myself?
I like, it's okay. It's a slightly complicated answer. So I do pay attention, but the reason that I pay attention is because I like to know that the companies are engaged with the media outlets. I like to know that they're engaged in social media and they're engaged with the consumer base. But I also like to know that they're connected to media, and I don't necessarily mean just Cigar Aficionado, the media in general. And the reason that I say that is I want to know that, like, it was the natural transition for me was in my store in Pompano. I could build a brand. I had the time, the shelf space, the clientele. Whereas here, we're not really brand builders. You know what I mean? The brand has to be pretty well established before it makes sense for us. But those entry tier, those new brands that are engaged on the media side of things is definitely, I think, an advantage for us. And then when it comes to the ratings, it's a hard answer. So I smoke everything before I'll even consider it. So yes, but usually what I go and look for with the ratings is I will gain a complete blank canvas opinion personally. Joel and Miguel and Alex and some of our other tobacconists will sit and smoke the cigar together, and we'll talk about consensus. And then collectively we'll go and look at the media outlets and see what they're saying, just to see if it is a consistent story being told. As it relates to the actual number, I don't care at all, to be completely honest with you. The top 25 lists and the things that come out at the end of the year, I love it. I think it's an opportunity for all the consumers in the industry to get super excited about stuff. And I think it's probably the single largest period of people trying and experimenting brands after those lists come out. But when it gets down to like the numbers, the what I would consider to be somewhat arbitrary figures, it doesn't. I've never ever made a decision based on a score. I think is the best way I can answer that.
If you had to come up with your own kind of rating system for a cigar, what criteria would you rate a cigar on? Like, what are you looking for?
Okay, so I do this. Consistency is, I think, is the most important thing, because our world is so subjective. You're going to get people with different palates and different times of day, different reasons for smoking. But once you get somebody onto something that they're enjoying, if that cigar stays consistent, and I think Padron is the best example of this on earth in almost any industry. People know when they go to a store and grab a Padron exactly what that experience is going to be. I've never ever spoken to anybody who was caught off guard by a Padron, right? So I think the consistency is one of the most important factors. As it relates to if I was to do a rating, I like to talk about the flavor profile. I like to talk about the way the cigar feels and looks. I like to talk about, and this is something that I don't think is really done a lot in our industry, but this came from my wine background, whereas the body, so the density of the smoke, the way it feels in the mouth. I realized through conversation years ago that people actually paid attention to it, even if they weren't necessarily conscious of the fact that they were noticing differences in the way the smoke felt in their mouth. So I try and deliver a synopsis of a product, anything that we sell in the humidor, based on all of those things without getting specific. Like I try not to say to somebody, forgive me, Charlie, but the Charlie Menudo example, you know, like I'm not going to tell you that I taste roasted lamb and toasted marshmallows and graham cracker, you know, because it's very specific.
Yeah.
But the strength of the cigar, the body of the cigar, all the rest of those other things, and also I think it's, for me, incredibly important to know where the tobacco came from, how old it is, how much was used, how many cigars were made, also so you can go back and gauge consistency. So I think, in a short answer, I would be a terrible cigar reviewer because that review I just drafted is probably 3 pages and nobody's going to read it. But I also think there's probably never been a better time to be a cigar smoker as far as the diversity and the quality of stuff that's being put out. So, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where, like in '88, and people are disappointed as far as manufacturers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas 15 years ago, there was maybe 3 cigars in an issue of Aficionado that were over 88. So I think that's part of the reason why I stepped back from the numbers, is because when I was looking at the magazines to learn, there was no such thing as a 94. And if it was a 94, it was a cigar that had been sitting in somebody's humidor for 10 years, you know. So for now, when I see it, and I understand it, it's relative, right? But just from my personal experience, when I grew up looking at 84s, 82s, 86s, and now everything's a 93, I just kind of stepped away from the scale, so to speak.
Yeah, and do you even understand what that scale is for these magazines or these media outlets that rate it? Like, do you know how do you get to a 94? Like you said, compared to a couple, you know, when you in the past it was 88. So what happened? Or like I said, I guess the issue I always have with ratings is that I never know how it's calculated. You just see picture of cigar, filler wrapper, binder, grade. That's it. And this is like, you're just supposed to go like, oh, okay. Like, I want to see like notes or hey, this is what made me like not like it. And there's some websites that do a better job than others. I know in a magazine you have only a limited amount of space. So if you want to get 20 reviews in, you can't have, you know, 5 pages worth of notes condensed down to it. But somewhere I feel like they should put that information on there to say this is how we were grading it. It wasn't just, you know, maybe this many people smoked it, we just combined our grades. I don't know. It just seems like it's gotten to the point where it's just random.
I agree with you entirely. I would absolutely love it if any publication that did reviews would put a page in every one of their magazines detailing their process. And some do, you know what I mean? Like, we all know at this point in time the standards and the story for how Aficionado does their blind tastings. But to your point, nobody really ever describes their scale and how their scale comes to be. I think one of the things that I loved was kind of right around the time where I was talking about this natural transition where I distanced myself from the numbers, Cigar Press, and I became aware of Cigar Press as an outlet. And they just there's no numbers. They'll tell you the price of the cigar, they'll tell you, and the flavor notes, and then their experience. And for me, as a consumer, forget the business side of things, but as a consumer, that's got much more value than an 88, a 94, cigar of the year. You know, if you can tell me if you can set the table and then leave me to have my own experience, I'll be forever. Right. But if you sit me down and tell me what's about to happen, then I don't even need the cigar, you know, like. But I agree with you for sure. I think more and more you're starting to see, I think people are paying attention to the fact that a lot of the consumers have woken up to the fact that the top 25 lists, for one reason or another, are maybe just a list. Mm-hmm. You're starting to see people who have a voice shifting away from rankings and metrics. And, you know, I think another thing like Dojo, for example, their cigar battles, I love that concept. You know, smoke this cigar, smoke that cigar, which one did you like more?
Yeah.
Or if you have these 2 options, which one will you smoke, and then smoke it with us? The idea that, like, for example, I'm one of those guys that will take my band off my cigar almost immediately, for a couple different reasons. A, I really like the feel of a cigar. It's something that is a big part of the attraction for me. So I like that to be uninhibited. But also, I don't want to be constantly reminding myself what I'm smoking, other than good tobacco and then go from there. So I think I'm probably the fringe, right, where I want almost no information, just hand me the cigar and we'll take it from there. But I do think that we're going to start to see, hopefully, kind of either a structure of a rating system or moving away from it.
Definitely. I like that. You made some good points.
Thank you.
I have some ideas twirling around in my head right now. So
perfect. Good. Good.
So, I mean, you see a lot of manufacturers, I think, stepping up right now because of what we're all subjected to. It's been a great equalizer, I think, because whether you're a manufacturer, a retailer, consumer, media person, I mean, we're all in the same boat right now. And, I see a lot of manufacturers doing different things to try to help stimulate a little bit of business for the retailers. I mean, for you, I mean, I know you're in a different city, different situation, but I mean, what kind of help from the manufacturers are you looking for right now to kind of get things kind of going again?
Sure.
Are you looking for a deal? Or are you looking for just a promotion? What is it?
Man, I'm at some point in time in this interview, I'm going to give you a short, simple answer. First off, I want to say I've been utterly floored by the support and the kindness and the partnership on both the spirit and the tobacco side. And not a day has gone by where 4 or 5 people haven't reached out, and vice versa. On the hospitality side of things, major brands, some major distributors and smaller brands have stepped up and helped out hospitality staff. So for me, it's been really a prideful moment in that part of the reason that I ended up coming and choosing this business is because it was such a people-driven business and I care about people. So to see a reflection of what we are as an industry, hospitality in general, on both the tobacco and the liquor side of things has been outstanding. As far as what I'm looking for, that's actually kind of the answer. It's in the short term, we're different in that we've been kind of focusing on not so much what do we do right now, but how do we prepare ourselves for what is going to inevitably change in the future. One of my members, a friend of mine, it was a great example, and this is going to stay with me for life. But he said, before September 11th, 2001, if you told me that I was going to go into an airport and take my shoes off, I would have told you you're crazy. But things change, and then we adjust. So that's really been my perspective from this whole thing, is figuring out what adjustments are going to need to be made, how to do that. That's where we're putting our effort and our energy internally as a company. And from our supply side of things, I mean, you're right. Manufacturers have been doing a tremendous amount. I get phone calls, just like you said, people asking, what can we do for you? What do you need? What will help? People interested in doing like virtual tastings and virtual and Zoom calls and herfs and stuff like that. So I guess the short answer is what I would ask for is nothing, to be honest, because they've been doing it. What we need in the immediacy also is very minimal, in that most of our communication, most of our social media, our internal emails have really more been about reaching out to our patrons and our customers and our regulars and making sure that they're okay and seeing if there's anything that we can do for them. I've been connecting people from business to business who are in our own network. For example, somebody needed some roofing done and they weren't sure if contractors were still working. I have a regular who's a roofing contractor. We got them connected, you know what I mean? So it's really been more about that, which is cementing our current relationships for a long-term future and letting people know that when we say, when you're a member or a regular or just a patron, you're part of our family, it's not just a pitch, you know what I mean? We mean it. So that's really been where we've been focused. The manufacturers, as far as the deals and I know what they're doing, and I think what they're doing is of tremendous value to so many people. But we are so much more experiential than we are anything else, that I don't really have much motivation, for example, to do like a virtual herf or a tasting with a manufacturer for 15 or 20 people, because I would rather just put those 15 or 20 people on a virtual hearth with a couple manufacturers and have a conversation about, you know, having your kids home from school, families, you know what I mean? We've really taken this time to get back to life, and including spirit partners and tobacco partners in that journey, rather than, you know, like a stick deal or something else. I think personally, I really appreciated the perspective that this has all brought, which is, you know, re-understanding, re-evaluating what's really important, and at the same time, seeing the whole community come together, and having it happen in a time where those that we're supposed to rely on to help us in these times have failed miserably, meaning, you know, like the top levels. But rather than worrying about that, if you take one step down and you look at people, and even large businesses and entities, they're actually taking care of each other. So for me, that's really been more than anything. What I would have asked and would have liked to have seen has happened, in that people are just being neighbors. It's been amazing.
And do you think that this whole situation maybe will benefit the industry? Because I know we started off 2020 kind of rocky. Like there's a lot of for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but it just seemed like, you know, sides are getting drawn, and, you know, you had this kind of retailer against this kind of retailer. You have people releasing, you know, these long, this like tirades of this, like, I'm angry, this is why I'm angry, you know, this person's doing this, this is that. And then now it seems like we're all kind of, maybe we all need to go to our own corners and kind of cool off, and this forced us to. And I don't know about you, but I've seen it a lot, things kind of maybe smoothing out a little bit compared to if it had just gone on.
Well said, first off, yes. The way the year started, I actually put a video up about this a while ago, which was, you know, I felt like we were getting away from what I thought we always were, which was the opposite. You know what I mean? Of course, people are going to have preferences and draw your lines where they need to be, and your brand identities and all the rest of that. But the infighting needed to come to an end. So, I mean, it's hard to take a look at, you know, a national crisis and say, well, at least the cigar industry is getting along again. But that's a positive, right? Also, I think because of the nature of our culture, it's very challenging to get us as an industry as a whole to evolve and look to do new things and develop new paths and new outlets. And that's another thing that I think has come from this, is people are pulling themselves out of their comfort zone on the manufacturer and the retailer side. You know what I mean? The small end, like the grab and go stick shops, they've had to become more engaged. And it's not to say that they weren't in the first place, but I'm just saying those who maybe weren't. When I was on the sales side of the business, I used to have a lot of conversations with a lot of other retailers from my retail perspective. And it was always about, stop worrying about what the online guys are doing, what your competitors are doing, and all the rest of those other things. That's energy that's wasted. You can't change that. What are you doing? And I think one of the things that I've loved to see specifically from the retail side is people are getting creative. And they're willing to take chances on things and try new things. And they're not expecting them to be successful. It's something to try. And I think as far as long-term benefit, I'm hoping that's going to be one of the biggest ones, which is people re-engaged, re-energized, especially with the regulatory climate that we're in, globally and nationally, and everything else. The idea that we're going to start to be innovators, maybe not the right word, because it's not really an industry of innovation, but evolving is something that I'm really happy to see, and I hope it continues as we get back to normalcy.
Yeah, definitely. Because I do remember that video that you posted, you know, and I was like, that's definitely going on. It was just, it's been a really strange year so far. And we're not even halfway through
Right.
it yet. So, I mean, I don't even want to say who knows what else could happen, because anything at this point could happen. But it's nice to see, like I said, that the industry seems to have, like you said, calmed down a little bit. And there are lots more companies and individuals taking chances to engage with their customers. And I'm hoping that when things do kind of settle down a little bit and things can get back to some type of normalcy, maybe the new normal, that, you know, companies don't forget this time, and they don't forget how we all kind of work together, and how, you know, they reached out to retailers on a regular basis, how they how they took into consideration that not all of their consumers are in one place. So they had these virtual hearths just to kind of touch base with them and show them different people, behind the scenes of the companies. Because I've probably seen more, like, just from every company, like more of the people that I know, that I interact with, like suddenly like thrust in front of the camera, which has been nice.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. It's nice to see, just like you said, it's nice to see the people that we, on the inside, that we knew were always there, getting an opportunity to showcase, for sure.
Right. I mean, in terms of the retail and for retailers and stuff going forward, like 2020, I mean, like, what do you hope to kind of see just out of this, just taking all the manufacturers out of play and trade organizations? I mean, like, what do you want to see come from like the retailers, especially those who sell tobacco products like cigars and such?
Okay, I'm probably going to get in a little bit of trouble for this, but on the top of my list, I'm really, really hoping that we get rid of the mentality of the race to the bottom. And what I mean by that is we've allowed, as an entity, as an industry, we've allowed the pricing war of the online retailers to infiltrate into brick and mortar. And I don't mean keystone pricing and protected pricing and manufacturer suggested and all the rest of those other things, but the idea that the way we delivered value was by lowering costs or by incentivizing purchases, as opposed to creating value with effort, energy, and execution. I think that's something that has been lost in retail altogether. Major retailers, of course, are going to race to the bottom because they're playing a volume game. It's a different animal. But I prefer to do mom and pop small business purchases. And as a consumer, I've had so many mediocre retail experiences, not in cigars. It's never in tobacco. In general, just buying stuff where nobody seems to give a shit that I'm giving them. Sorry, I don't know if this is PG-13.
Oh, that's fine.
Nobody seems to care that I'm giving them my money. They think that I should be grateful to be able to buy their product. So for retail in general, the idea that, like, the overwhelming sweeping mentality that the internet is here to crush brick and mortar retail forever. I understand that times are changing and things are evolving, but at the same time, I don't believe it. I think people want experiences and they want personal connections and engagements. And we have a special advantage in that we have something that people are very passionate about as consumers. I mean, nobody goes into Publix to buy their food with the same discerning detail that they look at for their cigars, right? So if we can reflect that back with passion, integrity, and commitment to delivering an experience, that's one of the things that I'm most excited about. And it also goes back to when I was on the sales side of things. One of the things I used to say most to my retailers that I was partnered with was, turn off the internet. Stop looking at what Famous is discounting or who's selling what to who and all the rest of those other things, or deciding to buy a cigar, whether or not it's based on online, and invest yourself in the product and sell it because you want to, and stop worrying about all the rest of these other things. And be objective. You know what I mean? If you tried something and it didn't work, okay, fine, move on. But don't not try it for all of these things that are outside of your control. So I think, for me, my biggest hope is, as a culture and an industry, we get back to showing people why we all think this is such a special thing, and embodying that in our practices. And I think that's my major hope for the growth of what we will see outside of this. But also, to your point, technology. The fact that technology has started to work its way in, I think, is a very good thing. I will tell you personally, the first time I heard about jumping on a Zoom call with 12 guys and sitting around smoking cigars, I was like, I don't think I want to do that. And then I did, and it was great. I mean, I still prefer this, obviously, but in a time of necessity, and being able to speak to people in real time from California, Alaska, Florida, wherever else, is great. So I would like to see a little bit more structure behind that. 12 people just looking at a screen and staring at each other is not really attractive to me. Um, but like our internal Zoom call, same thing. We start out with, how's everybody's health? How are your families? Does anyone need anything? And bringing that kind of personal connection to it. Also, to your point, I really look forward to seeing companies giving more access to their staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of companies are afraid to put certain individuals in the public light because they don't want them to not represent the brand. But in our business, I think especially I meet so many people who act as if they're the owner that I would love to see different perspectives from within the same company. And again, like you said, me being in Miami, I have a major advantage in that I get to see owners, makers, farmers, and reps. But getting to see not on their own personal outlets, because that's always happened, but the company giving the brand access and accounts to sales guys and office people and factory and warehouse workers.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to see literally, I mean, I've watched now, I think, 2 different videos of somebody I know unpacking a crate of cigars. I think it's important. I think we need to pull the veil off a little bit. You know, not everybody has an opportunity to go to a farm and a factory. I think everybody should, but it's not necessarily in the cards immediately for everybody. So being able to see more and more of pulling back the curtain and getting to know more of the people in the business who are not necessarily the guy with their name on the cigar.
Yeah, and I definitely think that, you know, for this industry, I've been working on the media side since 2010. And, you know, and the first impression that you get when you look through all the pictures and you read the stories is that it's a very polished, usually kind of polished industry. Everything has to be perfect. And like you said, every brand has a face. They can't have 2 faces. That's been the mentality. So it's like you only get a certain, you know, view of it. So being able to see and hear from different people within the company and their approach, I mean, you're just, to me, it's just beneficial. And like you said, sometimes it's just a matter of the companies kind of feeling comfortable enough to let people kind of step out in front of the camera. And if you have to throw a disclaimer up that it says it's their opinion, then do it. But it's like, but I think more people should be out there, because I know a whole bunch of people, and I know you do too, who are in the industry who you never really see. They work behind the scenes, and some of it might just be their comfort level, but some of it's just because they think, oh, I'm just a background person. I'm not worthy of being in front of the people. This other person's a brand rep. Well, you know, let them do the talking. Well, these people know just as much about the brands and a little bit more, and can go a little bit on a completely different level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, you know, the 200 to 300 hands it takes to make a cigar from start to finish, right? But at the end of the day, you see like 4 of those 200 hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's nice to see it's opening up a little bit, you know, and again, at the factory level, at the farm level, you get to understand that it's generational. I mean, most of the people who sit at a rolling table are at least 2nd generation, if not 3rd and beyond. So not only are they their experience, but they have their father or grandfather or mother or grandmother. So bringing those kinds of stories to the light, and I think, you know, the 200 hands example and only being able to see 4, if we could make it 50, that'd be amazing. But somewhere in the middle I'm happy with. But yeah, I think again, as a consumer, there's no better time. The cigars that are being made right now, in my opinion, have not ever been better. I think Cuban tobacco has unfortunately taken a massive downturn, but Dominican, Honduras, Nicaragua, as far as producers, in the growing regions that you're seeing, I mean, you know, Cameroon, everything else. I don't remember where I was going with that. So, but getting back to kind of enhancing that and understanding that it's an exciting and interesting time to be in this business, regardless of all the stuff that's going on that we have no control over, and just highlighting that. And to your original point, rather than being frustrated and infighting, if we come together, or maybe not, maybe coming together is not necessarily your motivation, but just not making the problem worse and focusing on what we do and why we do it, I think is very promising for this kind of little reset that we got from the start of 2020 for sure.
Well, we're close to the end of our hour together, but what I wanted to do is to have you kind of tell people where Prime Cigar is, how to get to it, how to follow you all online, just so that when all this is over, hopefully, they can look you all up and come in for a cigar and a nice drink.
All right. So first off, I want to say thank you to you specifically, for including us and including me in this, but also, and I told you this before off camera, but what you do for us and what your commitment has been incredible. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
For everybody who's watching and listening and who maybe listened, I'm the general manager. My name's Shiah of Prime Cigar and Whiskey Bar. We are a 10-year-old company. This location is in Brickell, right in downtown Miami at 1106 South Miami Avenue. We are about 15 minutes from the Miami airport, about 15 minutes from Miami Beach, right in the heart of the most thriving neighborhood in Miami. And we have a new location called Empire Social, which is opening in downtown Dadeland, like 10 miles south of here, right near Dadeland Mall. Prime Cigar, if you haven't been, the one thing that I will suggest is before you come, or don't, but check out our reviews, because really what we do and our major driving force is giving people a reason to come back. And rather than what I have to say, I think it's much better from their mouths. So our feedback kind of speaks for itself. But our major emphasis, what we really do, and from myself, the primary owners, our partners, everybody here is driven by passion. So that's really what it's about, and it reflects. So it's an opportunity to come and really just be entirely taken care of, and just spoiled, with the roots being in whiskey and tobacco.
Awesome. Well, I always have fun catching up with you. Like I said, you and I always have great conversations. So I definitely wanted to kind of bring that into this week, and you definitely delivered today. So
thank you.
I look forward to our next encounter, whenever that is. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Agreed, for sure.
And thank you again. I know you and I will be in touch about other stuff and other stories, but I look forward to talking to you next.
Likewise, sincerely. And if you need anything, please don't hesitate. And thank you again for putting this together and for everything that you do. And for sure, we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good weekend.
Have a great day. Wash your hands.
Yeah. Will do. I got my mask nearby. Don't worry.
Okay.
All right. Take care, Antoine.
Okay, bye.
Be well, everyone.